Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bekka Beaufeaux. Thank you so much for finding the time in your busy schedules to spend with me today. I'd love to speak with you about mental health and wellness, a possible stigma that may be happening in our educational settings, and adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs. I'd also love to bring to the table potential buffering strategies that educators can offer students who may have a high exposure rate to ACEs. This discussion fulfills the final presentation requirement for the course Engaging the Community from St. Mary's University in Minnesota. Instructor, Dr. Jenna Mitchler. Mental health and wellness can be defined as a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. When one of these things is out of whack, that's when mental health illnesses come into play. Let's discuss a little bit about stigma that might be associated with mental illness. Recent research indicates that 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health illness in their lifetime. And it has been observed that people who suffer from a mental illness are unlikely to seek treatment due to feelings of embarrassment or shame. This is all caused by mental health stigma, either within a family, a community, or an educational setting. Recently released reports from Franciscan's Children's Hospital states stigma can cause isolation, fear, and hopelessness. It can lead individuals to hide their mental health symptoms, fail to seek professional help, or detach themselves from their community. What are some examples of things that are said in regards to mental health stigma? Mental health stigma can be viewed in a variety of ways. You're faking it. Can't you just choose to be happy? Try and exercise. Other people have it a lot worse, are just some of the phrases recognized as societal stigma, which were identified by people with a mental health diagnosis. Stigma can also be shown through actions. The time that you avoided a neighbor because you didn't know how to ask them about their son who left school due to schizophrenia was doing, or the time you crossed the street to avoid having a conversation with a friend whose daughter had recently died by suicide. Through these societal phases and actions, people, knowingly or unknowingly, reinforce negative stigma. Mental health and wellness have been identified as the no casserole diseases. The casserole anecdote speaks to the meal trains that are often organized in the Midwestern United States by family, friends, and community when a person is diagnosed with cancer, another difficult disease, suffer the loss of a family member, or even has a baby. It is very likely that after a family receives a mental illness diagnosis, they are not being showered with casseroles and sentiments from their family, colleagues, and neighbors. Franciscan Children's, 2018. What are some of the ways as educators we can combat this mental health stigma that may be happening within our classroom and our school buildings? Thanks for that great question, Bekka. The National Alliance on Mental Illness outlines 9 ways that we can combat stigma. Talk openly about mental health. Educate yourself and others. Be conscious of language. Encourage equality between physical and mental illness. Show compassion for those with mental illness. Choose empowerment over shame. Be honest about treatment. Let the media know when they're being stigmatizing. And finally, don't harbor self-stigma. Let's switch gears now and start talking about adverse childhood experiences. Adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, include a subset of 10 defined exposures that happen prior to the age of 18. These are then further sectioned into 3 general categories. The first category is abuse, second, neglect, and final, household dysfunction. The category of abuse contains 3 of the 10 exposures: physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. The category of neglect includes 2, physical neglect and emotional neglect. The final category of household dysfunction includes 5 of the 10 exposures: mental illness, mother treated violently, divorce, incarcerated relative, and substance abuse. These 10 exposures were explicitly defined within the first large-scale ACE study, now commonly known as the CDC Kaiser ACE study. The first round of this study was conducted between 1995 and 1997 and included 2 data collection waves. Data were collected retrospectively from over 17,000 health maintenance organization members from Southern California. Participants underwent voluntary physical examination and completed a confidential survey concerning their ACE exposure. The resulting information has been utilized in countless research studies, has undergone peer review, and affected the understanding of dose-response relationships of early childhood trauma and future adverse health effects. So a kid goes through a little bit of traumatic experience in life. What could that mean? Well, recent research identified evidence in current literature showing ACEs in relation to changes in the brain and the body of people with an ACE exposure. Changes to both the phenotype, which is observable characteristics, and genotype, genetic constitution of subjects include telomere length variation. This is the cap at the end of a chromosomal structure. Progeria, which is accelerated aging. These, along with epigenetic changes, which are heritable changes which are not coded in the DNA, caused by both exogenous and endogenous environmental and physical stimuli, all show alarming differences in a person's body who have ACE exposure versus a person who has a 0 on an ACE assessment scale. In this study, ACEs were fully defined as traumatic events that can have negative and lasting effects on health and well-being. Another major result of this study found that 67% of the population have at least one ACE, and 1/8 of the population are considered polyvictimized individuals, having more than 4 ACEs. Further data collected showed that people with 6 or more ACEs can die 20 years earlier than those who have none. Adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. As shocking as this information is, we have to face the sad fact that we are dealing one-on-one with children every day who have an exposure to an ACE. What does this mean in our classrooms? Literature suggests children with ACEs are more likely to be retained. They may have impaired memory and lower verbal skills. They may require more discipline referrals, and they may show increased externalizing behaviors such as aggression, defiance, hyperactivity. They may have difficulties with things like attention. They may show lower test scores and more absences. Higher suspension rates are prevalent as well. They also have an increased internalizing behavior such as depression, anxiety, and withdrawing from social situations. Finally, these students may have difficulty regulating emotions. Unfortunately, the buck doesn't stop when they graduate from school. Let's take a look at what happens to ACE-exposed individuals as they get older. This pictograph is from Joining Forces for Children from March 29th of 2018 in the article, What Are ACEs? ACEs may have future behavioral impacts and physical and mental health impacts. These include smoking, alcohol abuse, lack of physical activity, drug abuse, and missing work. Severe obesity, depression, diabetes, suicide attempts, STDs, chronic lung disease, stroke, cancer, heart disease, and broken bones. As educators, it's important to understand that we cannot diagnose a child with any mental illness, but we also must be on the lookout for signs and symptoms to better understand our children that are in front of us. How can we support these children in their educational journey and provide potential buffers for future negative health impacts from the related ACE exposure? I believe that truly amazing teachers make a difference. As an ACE exposure survivor myself, I can tell you that knowledge is power. The risk factors and the protective factors in my life were able to balance out and help me become a pretty well-adjusted adult. As Shannon Yeager likes to say, resilience is the key to helping our students. This is the ability to bounce back or to overcome misfortune or change. Every person who takes an ACE assessment, I believe, should also take a resiliency factor assessment. Resilience factors include the ability to take care of yourself, actively problem solve, having a meaning and a purpose in your life, having a good social support network, and the ability to maintain a positive outlook. These 5 aspects are the resilience factors that we can help develop within our children. Other ways we can help support our ACE-exposed families are to strengthen economic supports to families, change social norms to support parents and positive parenting, to provide quality care and education early in life, to enhance parenting skills to promote healthy child development, and finally, to intervene to lessen harms and prevent future risk. This information graph is from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So very important to know that these buffers that we can provide for the families do provide change. ACE reduction reliably predicts simultaneous decrease in all of these conditions. Let me again go over some ways that we can provide protective buffering for students and families who might have an ACE exposure. We can create these close relationships with competent caregivers or other caring adults with these students who may have an ACE exposure. We can help our parents by fostering parent resilience, which they can in turn share with their children. Providing the caregivers with knowledge and application of different positive parenting skills, identifying and cultivating a sense of purpose for us, relying on our faith and understanding that God put these exposures in our lives for a reason, and we may be the people to help bring these children closer to their religion. We can also check in on our children's social and emotional health and social connections, help each other understand the importance of society. Socioeconomic advantages and concrete support for parents and families is another way that we can help our students and families through these difficult times. Finally, providing communities and social systems that support health and development and nurture human capital. As I like to tell our students at Holy Ghost School, every life is worth dignity and respect, and we must be able to provide this and a firsthand experience for our kiddos. Well, guys, I'd like to take a moment to say thank you so much for participating in my talk today. I'll be shooting you an email later with a link to a Google form just asking for an exit ticket to prove that you were participating in my wonderful talk today. I'll stay on for any further questions you may have about mental health, a stigma that's associated with an educational setting, and adverse childhood experiences. I'll show you some of my references on the next 3 slides. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate your help and continued support in my furthering education.